It was hard.
Did you feel alone?
I wouldn't say that I felt alone.
Oh, it's okay.
It's just things that, like, as a teenager, you shouldn't have to go through and deal with. A lot of responsibility was put on me, and I felt like I had to be this person that I didn't know how to be.
Yeah.
Girls on Fire ATX.
Wake up in my bed, I just wanna have a good day.
Welcome to Girls on Fire ATX. I'm your host, Samantha.
And I'm your host, Esther.
And today's episode is going to be led by Esther.
Okay, so this podcast has been very therapeutic, not only for me, but for Sam. And I posted a video yesterday on Instagram talking about like vulnerability and talking about shit that people don't really see behind the scenes. And I think social media is very quick to, that's your highlighted reel, right? And I just feel like there's been so much stuff that has happened to me and has happened to Sam. And I feel like we both have such different stories, but when her and I talk like on closed doors, we relate on a lot of different things. And I thought it would be cool to try to give you guys a glimpse and make this and get you guys to know who Sam is, what she went through, what made her who she is today, and try to keep it a positive light. And if anything resonates with you, like, that's just the goal, like just to make you feel like if maybe you went through something similar, that you're not alone.
Yeah, bringing awareness to mental health.
Yeah. And I just think it would just be very therapeutic, and I appreciate anybody that's listening. So I just kind of want to be, I'm going to be like the therapist. I'm going to start asking questions, and then, we'll go from there. So Sam, but let's start it in a positive light.
Okay.
So Sam, how would you describe yourself as a kid?
As a kid, well, I am the oldest of three. So my sister is two and a half years younger than me, and then my little brother is 6 years younger than me. So obviously it was like me and my sister for a while because, of the age difference. But I would like to say, my mom always told me I was a really good kid. So I would like to say that I was really good. I was also really shy as a kid. Like I was definitely, my mom tried to put us in like modeling and like casting calls and stuff. And I was never good at it because I was just so shy. I would like clam up in front of the camera and I wouldn't, it wasn't for me. My sister was better at it for sure. But I was definitely a very like shy, not necessarily not outgoing, but kept to myself a lot.
Yeah. What would you say were like some of the fun things that you liked to do when you were younger?
Well, I mean, we're going back some decades here, but, back when I was a kid, we didn't have all the things that kids have now. So it was a lot of playing outside, playing with the neighborhood kids, riding our bicycles, just like walking to the park, stuff like that. Funny, this is a story that like I always remember. Did you ever, as a kid, like smash a soda can in your bicycle so that when your bicycle was riding, it sounded like a motorcycle?
Kind of, where it was clamped onto the wheel.
Yeah, it was like clamped onto the wheel. So like the way it sounded. We used to do that all the time.
Yeah, I totally remember doing that. But I want to ask, okay, so was there anything that you can think of from your childhood that kind of made an impact in your life that has impacted your childhood into your adulthood?
It's hard to say like maybe what has impacted me because I know that we've obviously talked off camera and like off the episode about this kind of stuff. Me being the oldest, I have always been like kind of like the protector of my sister and brother, and always like been, even though it sounds silly to say, but like been the mom of the kids. My parents were very old school. They worked a lot. So a lot of responsibility fell on me because back when I was a kid, leaving your kids at home and like at a certain age wasn't necessarily that big of a deal. It as it is now anyways, yeah, we had a babysitter, but when we would come home from school, like I was the one that would make sure that everyone had the snacks and that like we were doing our homework and stuff like that. So, I mean, I have very vague memories of like my childhood, to be completely honest with you.
Do you feel like that has Oh, I changed. Do you feel like you ever were able to feel like you were a kid? Like
No, not really. I mean, and I can only say that now as an adult because as I'm learning more about mental health, as I'm learning more about trauma and like things that I'm experiencing now that comes back to childhood stuff, it makes sense that like no, I was not really able to have like the childhood that most kids probably have.
When you were young, did you have like any dreams of like what you wanted to be when you were older?
You know, I've been asked that question a lot. I don't know, as far back as you can remember, in school, elementary school, middle school, everyone's like, "Oh, what do you want to be when you grow up?" I don't remember being asked that question.
Really?
Yeah, like I don't remember anything in school being like, "Oh, what do you want to be?" Like, this sounds so morbid to say, because I'm 31, about to be 32 years old. Like, in my mind, as a kid growing up, I felt like I was programmed and conditioned to think you graduate high school, you get a job, you find a husband, and you have children, and that's what you do. Like, that was what I was programmed to think. Like, that was what my goal was, is like, okay, like I want to get a good job, something that has a 401k, that has benefits and paid vacation, and then like I have to have a husband and start a family.
Yeah, because you probably from like taking care of your siblings and stuff. I wouldn't say taking care, but like being like the one that was
oldest,
like, and having that responsibility. I'm the youngest, so I have no idea what it's like to be the oldest. So I'm trying to like put myself in your shoes in that, because like I feel like that would probably be a very heavy weighted.
Well, you got to think. I can say this because I'm a parent, so it's like the first kid, unfortunately, for the most part, for most families, I think, kind of gets the brunt of everything, right? Because it's the first time that the parents are like figuring out how to have a kid, like how to react to certain situations, punishments, stuff like that, And unfortunately, it all falls down onto how they were raised, right? So like the way that they are raising me and the way that the things that they do all fall from the way that they were raised. So unfortunately, my parents had very strict parents. Like my dad's dad was in the military, and my mom's mom like went through some stuff. So like, and that's when beating your child was not that big of like, hey, what you do with your kid behind closed doors is on you. So it's like, I definitely got a lot of spankings. So I tell my sister and brother all the time, like, be glad that I was the oldest because I took it all.
Oh, I was spanked too, and oh my gosh. How do you think that what you went through as a child affected your teenage years?
Probably a lot more than I realized at the time. I've always believed that I'm like an old soul. Like every time someone would meet me, they'd be like, "Oh, I thought you were like the way that you handle yourself, you're very mature for your age." I've been told that my whole life. And a lot of it, I think, is because I did have to grow up a lot faster than normal like teenagers did. My parents started to separate when I was like 15, 16 years old. So that puts my sister at like 13, 14 and put my brother at like 10, 11. And at first, it's funny because when I look back at the situation now, I'm like, the concept that my brain wrapped around was that my parents didn't love each other anymore, and that was why they were getting a divorce. And as I got older, obviously, I found out the real reason, and it kind of just upset me because at the time, like, what does every 16-year-old girl want? To be like best friends with her mom, And my mom went through, we'll call it her midlife crisis, because she, for whatever reason, whatever my mom was going through mentally in her own head is one thing, but unfortunately it did have an adverse effect on her children because, she was bringing home men that were 5-6 years older than me at the time, and she was constantly wanting to go out. I can't tell you how many times I had to pick her up from the bar because she was too drunk to drive home. And mind you, I'm 16 years old. So like then my mom's going out when I turned 18, she's going out with me. And then when I turned 21, we're drinking together. And it was like this whole thing that like at the time I'm like, oh, like my mom's super cool. Like she wants to party with me. She wants to do all these things. She lets me do whatever I want. But then looking back now as an adult, it's like, well, that's not okay. Because I, unfortunately, the issues that I have with men all fall and stem from situations that, she allowed us to see and witness. And as much as I told myself I wasn't going to be like that, and I haven't been to an extent, but it's like the things that I allow or have allowed in the past with relationships and men, it all stems from like shit that I experienced with her.
Yeah. Did you feel like you were kind of following in her footsteps in a sense?
No, because she, like I said, I would like to, it's like I don't want to put my mom on blast because I don't want people to think that she's a bad person, because we all deal with things like whatever she was going through at that time, and she handled that by doing certain things is one thing, but it's like I shouldn't have to wake up in the morning as a 16-year-old and see some random guy on my mom's couch or on the couch in the living room, and then like they're flirting with me after they just slept with my mom, you know, or my sister having to deal with that for the most part. I mean, my sister was 14 years old and she was dating someone that was one of my best guy friends in high school who was my age. She moved into their house. At 14 years old, my sister moved into her boyfriend's parents' house and lived with them. She dated that guy for like 7 years, you know, fine, whatever. But like, what 14-year-old is moving in with their boyfriend, you know? And like, my little brother ended up moving with my dad because my mom, you know, there was 3 of us, and that was just a lot as for a single parent. And like, he was a boy, so I guess it just made sense that he went with our dad. But it was hard.
Did you feel alone?
I wouldn't say that I felt alone.
Oh, it's okay.
It's just things that, like, as a teenager, you shouldn't have to go through and deal with. A lot of responsibility was put on me, and I felt like I had to be this person that I didn't know how to be.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Did you have like a role model that made an impact on you to want to strive to be better?
I mean, I knew that I didn't want to be like my mom. I knew that I wanted to do something better.
I know, this is really, really tough, and this is why I pushed to try to have this episode, because I don't think that a lot of people understand, like, what we all have our own stories. We all have things that we've dealt with that nobody knows about or talks about that does, like, affect who we are today. And so I think that if, like I said, like, if this resonates with you, like, let us know. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's very heavy.
It's definitely a lot, because like I said, it's more it's more upsetting now as an adult because I know better, right? And at the time, like, I didn't know better. I was just like, this is what I thought was normal. And like, that's the problem. Is like you're conditioned to think that things that are not normal are like okay, and it's not.
Yeah. When you became in your earlier 20s, did you feel like you had more of like more structure because you were more on your own at that time?
A little bit. So as I got older, as I got like a job and I was working, that was around the time. So I graduated high school in 2000. Well, I was technically class of 2007, and 2008 was like when they had that like huge market crash again. And so my parents lost, like, our house went into foreclosure. But because of how many people's houses went into foreclosure at that time, we were actually really fortunate enough to be able to stay in that house for like, I think another 3 years before like they finally started doing the paperwork to actually like close and the state take the house. Mm-hmm. So we were living in a house basically rent free. However, we still had to pay for all of the utilities. And at that time, my mom had lost her job. So I was working, and it was me and her living in the house. And at the time, I was dating the father of my daughter. He ended up moving in with me, but I was basically paying the bills because my mom didn't have a job. And like, yeah, she was getting unemployment, but like I was still at the time like 18, 19 years old. So like I was trying to help. So basically, in a sense, the way I look at it, like I've kind of been on my own and like paying for bills since I was like 18, 19 years old, which is about average. I was very fortunate at the time that my grandmother, before she passed away, had like leased a car for me. So like I had a vehicle that she had been helping me pay for. But then when she passed away, I had to like take over everything, which was fine. But it's definitely, I moved out when I was into my own house when I was pregnant with Sage. Actually, I was 22 years old. Me and the father moved into the house in Zephyr Hills, Florida, which is where we was like down the street from where we were working. And that was the first time that like I had lived physically on my own without being in the house with my mom. But then, of course, like a ton of shit happened after that. So, you know.
So, do you want to talk about your relationship with your baby daddy?
I mean, we can, yes, for sure. I was 19 when we met. And of course, like I didn't know any better. Like he was good looking, he worked out, he had tattoos, you know, he was the typical like bad boy. And it's funny cuz like looking back, I really I don't remember like what other than the physicality things, like what attracted me to him. You know, like this sounds silly, but like he's a Scorpio, I'm an Aries, so it's like I think maybe it had to just do with like we had a really strong sexual connection. But slowly, quickly, things obviously like downward spiraled. But I unfortunately didn't really have a role model to tell me like that, like red flags, like when to walk away. So like I was constantly forgiving and I was constantly allowing things that were not okay. And he was my second boyfriend ever. So the guy I dated before him didn't end well either. He emotionally and like mentally abused me. So like I went into that relationship with the father with already having that mentality and that trauma. So when him and I would go through things like, you ever have somebody tell you that they love you, but then like they're doing all of the things that show you otherwise? And so like you have this conflict in your brain, like, but he's telling me that he loves me, but then why is he doing these things to hurt me? And you're so conflicted and you don't know what to do. And you're like, I mean, I was 19 years old. I wanted to believe, okay, well, maybe this is what it's supposed to be like. Maybe this is how relationships are. Again, I was like conditioned to think that this was normal. Like people mess up, that people aren't perfect, and they aren't. Ultimately, that we are not. Like we make mistakes, but like lying and cheating. There were several times that like I would wake up and my car would be gone because he didn't have a vehicle, and he had left and went and spent the night with some girl and didn't answer my phone, turned his phone off. I couldn't get a hold of him, left me without a car. I'm like sitting there like, if you've never been through it, I don't even know how to explain it to somebody, because the train cycle that goes through your brain, like of overthinking and creating scenarios in your head, and then because you're already insecure and hurting, you're believing these stories and you're thinking the worst possible things, and it's like no one should ever feel that way, and no one should ever put somebody through that, because if you've never experienced it, it is literally the most miserable feeling in the entire world. And then of course we had been together for like 2.5 years at this point, and that was when I got pregnant. I got pregnant like right after my 22nd. Hold on, math is hard right now.
It's okay.
It was around Thanksgiving of my 22nd, like the year I turned 22. So, and it's funny because I actually like gave him an out. I was like, if you don't want this, you need to tell me right now, because I don't want to go through this entire pregnancy with you and then you decide to leave me afterwards because it's too real for you. I was like, I need you to tell me now. And of course he was like, no, like I want to be with you. I'll be here, blah, 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 blah. It was fine for the first few months. And then all of a sudden, like things started shifting. He started not coming home, or like he wanted to be a rapper. And I'm not saying this to make fun of him, because like he wasn't terrible, but you know, like the music world is a really tough world. I was supportive. I let him, like, he made friends with this guy who had like a recording studio in his house. He was constantly over there recording music with him, but it got to the point where like he wasn't coming home again. And then I was hearing rumors, because we worked at the same establishment, that he was sleeping with this girl. And I was like, no, there's no way that he would do that. Like, I'm pregnant with his kid. Like, what guy would do that to his pregnant girlfriend? Like, are you kidding me? And I will never forget this day. But I woke up. He wasn't home. He had my car. We only had one car. I was like probably 6 or 7 months pregnant. I had to physically walk like 3 miles to the house because I knew where the guy lived. I walked to his fucking house, and lo and behold, my car was there, but he wasn't there because he was over at the girl's house that I had heard the rumors of him cheating on me with. And I was like so fucking heartbroken that like I ended up going into preterm labor because I was so stressed out emotionally, like mentally, physically, between working like full time as a pregnant, like being pregnant, as well as like all the emotional shit I was going through with him, and then um which after I think, and that was when I stopped working, and I ended up going to my mom's apartment and like staying with her, and then I also stayed with this other girl, Erin, who used to babysit us when we were kids, and basically was there until I had my daughter. And of course, the whole time, like he didn't check up on me, he didn't come see me. That was basically like the end of our relationship, because then 2 weeks after Sage was born, like he left me for the girl that he was cheating on me with. So like that was hard. And it's funny because people are like, well, did you go through postpartum depression? And I was like, honestly, if I did, I don't know that I did, because I didn't have a choice but to be strong, because I just had a baby. Like I literally had to go back to work 3 weeks after having her because I had nothing. I had moved out of the house that we had gotten together. I didn't have a car because I ended up having to sell the car that I had because it was a 2-door hatchback. I ended up having to like save up money to get like this 97 Toyota Corolla, just to like I paid cash for just because I needed a car. It was a lot. I was literally, when my daughter was 3 weeks old, I was sleeping on a twin size air mattress on the floor of my mom's 1-bedroom apartment.
So where you are now in life and you reflecting on all this, like, what would you tell yourself? What would you tell yourself?
So many
What
things.
would you tell your teenage self? Let's start there.
I mean, that was probably the time in my life where my personality started to become more like extroverted in a sense. Like I feel like I'm still a very introverted person, but like I started to have more of a personality, and like, but I was still so shy, and I didn't know how to stand up for myself. So if it's any advice I could give to myself, I mean, it sucks because it's like, what advice do you give yourself when you're not being guided by the people that are supposed to be guiding you?
Mm-hmm.
And it sucks because it's like my parents were going through their own thing. Like my dad was heartbroken. He had to move. He moved away. He was living in Fort Myers for a few years, and it's not like he didn't leave us, but he had to do what was best for him. And it's like being a parent, it's hard because sometimes it's like you're trying to make the right decisions for your children, but at the same time, if you don't make the right decisions for yourself, like how do you expect to make those decisions for your kids? It's such a tricky situation and such a hard thing, because it's like, well, yeah, your kids come first. Well, yeah, but if you're not okay, how do you expect yourself to be able to take care of your child? And my mom's, unfortunately, when I was a teenager, my mom's concern wasn't us, it was her. And that was where the problem lies. So it's like, it would have been nice for my mom to be a mom and not my best friend.
But look at all the stuff that has made you who you are today, and it sucks. It really, really, really does suck. But let's start talking about the positive, because all I see, and like, obviously we have hard hearts all the time, but what I see is this beautiful, radiant, beautiful human soul. And I feel like if you didn't go through those things, I don't think that you would have been this like amazing empathetic, like warm human being. So
Yeah.
Let's talk about your life now. What are your goals? What do you see your future? Because right now, like, I think you're thriving.
Thank you.
So,
I mean, that means a lot. I will say this, like, I am strong. I'm resilient. There's nothing that you can't throw at me that I won't overcome or find a way to overcome. Like that, if it's anything that I can say about myself, is like, everything that I have gone through has made me the woman that I am today, and I don't stand for shit these days. Like, I'm sorry, but like I know my boundaries. I know what I need and what I won't tolerate. And it's taken a few years to like really come into that, and like it's scary standing up for yourself and like and setting those boundaries and having to get over what people think and like worrying about who's going to be there in the end and all those things, but it's like it's worth it, because when you start to cut off the toxic things in your life, the things that are meant for you come for you. And when you start to see that, it's like getting a high. It's like, okay, so now I've made some like really good decisions for myself, and it not only makes you feel good, but then it's like all these good things start happening. Like, we met at a time where we were changing our lives, and we were like really making those hard decisions. And that's how Girls on Fire ATX came about, and since we've met, like I had graduated esthetician school, and it's like my whole dream, my whole goal in life is to like be my own boss. Like I don't see myself, I won't. It's not that I don't see myself. I will not work for someone else. I am going to own my own business. I am going to have my own things.
Yes, you are.
So, you know, like
Queen energy.
it's really just working towards those things and remembering that end goal. And it's like I was telling someone today, actually, that the hardest things, the most scary things, the things that like scare the shit out of you the most are usually the things that are the best for you. And it's like taking that jump, taking that leap to like make those decisions and really like remember why you're doing things, like knowing your why, because that's what's going to push you through the times when you're like, why am I doing this? Like, I feel like I'm giving up. Things just keep happening and that's setting me back. And it's like, that's the universe testing you and pushing you to push through, because just on the other side of that, something being hard is what you're dreaming about.
I am so proud of you. And I think I've told you this a million times, but I'm just so proud of you because like every day you're like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And I'm like, yes, do it.
It's funny.
This is your life.
I know. Well, it's funny because like, I'm sure you've seen the quotes where it says like work in silence, hustle in silence, build in silence, because at the end of the day, like when I come out and you see me doing all these big things, it's because I worked so hard for them. It's like, I don't need to tell everyone what I'm doing. You don't need to understand my life. It's not for you to understand. My life is for me to understand and for me to do something about it. So it's like when I come out on top and you're like, oh, how did she get there? It's because I worked in fucking silence. It's because I worked my ass off and wasn't out there talking about it. I was doing it.
It makes such a difference.
It really does.
Like I said, I am so, so proud of you. Like I'm very speechless because like this is very heavy stuff, and it honestly like it takes a lot of courage to talk about it and be vulnerable about it, because I don't think a lot of people are vulnerable about the stuff that has happened to them. People are so quick to be like, "Oh, she's crazy," or she's just dramatic," or "Oh, she's just like," you know, people will say all these negative things because they don't want to take the time to understand. And I think that's what this platform is.
And it's scary and it sucks because it's like I've gotten to a point in my life where like, and I've always been this way. I try to see things from everyone's point of view. And it is like, I mean, you asked me questions that like I couldn't even really answer because I've blocked out those memories. And that in itself is scary. It's like, what happened to me? What did I experience? What did I go through that was so traumatic that I suffered through that like I literally had to suppress that memory so much that it doesn't even exist to me. You know, that's a scary thought because it's like, the fact that like people, I can't, you know, like I can remember bits and pieces of things. Like I remember that I went to a Catholic elementary school, you know, like I remember the different middle schools that I went to. I couldn't tell you my teachers' names. I can tell you who some of my friends were, not in elementary school, but at least in middle school. So it's like the fact that I blocked out 5-6 years of my life, that's scary to me. That's like literally scary. Like my sister tells me stories and I'm like, I don't remember that. And she's like, how do you not remember that? And I'm like, I have no idea. Like I just don't remember.
It's just what your brain wants and will allow you to think.
It's like locked away things that are like, you probably shouldn't think about that.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, let's not do that today.
Yeah, because like when I brought up this subject on this like topic, I've had to reopen old wounds and shit. I don't know about you, but it made me depressed.
Yeah, I mean,
it's fighting through it. It's just healing.
Well, and not just that, but it's like I'm an Aries Italian woman. So like I am very much the type of person where it's like no one will ever see me weak. No one. I will cry on my own. I will handle my business on my own. You will if you were to ask people, like if you were to probably do a survey on people, it'd be like, you know, how would you describe Sam? She's positive, she's outgoing, she always looks at the best of things. Like I literally try to radiate that all of the time because I don't want people to see me weak. And I have to remember that that's okay. It's such a mentality that I've had to grow up living in. Like, I've got this, I can do this. And like, not that that's a bad mentality to have, but it's okay when you don't have it. It's okay if you don't know what to do. It's okay that you don't know how to handle something. I'm not perfect, but it's like living in the mentality that I've had to my whole life that like I have to do this. I have no choice. Like, it's tough.
It is. I think because people are talking about mental health now, people didn't talk about it then.
No, not at all.
It was like,
It
suck
wasn't
it up.
it wasn't a thing. Exactly. It wasn't a thing. It was like, oh, you're being a crybaby. What? Okay, so now having emotions is me being a crybaby, or I'm overreacting. That's my favorite one. You're overreacting. That's like a gaslighting mechanism. Like, what? I'm sorry. I'm reacting to your actions. Cool. Thanks.
No, words hurt.
I know.
Words and actions all hurt, and they do affect people,
Yeah.
whether they want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes this platform so amazing is that we're talking about it.
Well, and like I said to you earlier today, I'm like, people don't get to decide how something makes me feel. That's on me. Like, I'm allowed to feel however I want to feel towards somebody's actions or words or a situation or whatever. That's on me. You don't get to dictate and tell me how I should feel.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
I am so proud of you. Oh my gosh.
it's crazy because we technically, you know, if you really think about it, this just like scratches the surface of just like a fraction of like the shit that we've been through. But, you know, got to start somewhere. Baby steps.
I know. Is there anything that like you wish, like any advice that you could give to anybody that is listening? Like I'm honestly so speechless. Like I'm like trying to find more.
It's not so much advice that I would like to give anyone. It's just, as corny as this sounds, it's really just like follow your gut instincts. Follow what you feel is right. Because if that's something that like I do now that I didn't do then, is like when you feel something to your core, forget the gut instinct thing, because like they say it, it's like when you feel something to your core that isn't right or something that you don't agree with, it's probably something that you shouldn't agree with, and it's probably something that you shouldn't do, or someone that you shouldn't like put up with. Like, I know there are several circumstances that, you know, make that aren't so easy to just say that to. But when it comes to like little things in life, like it really, what I love that this world is really coming into is like loving yourself. And I wish that that is something that had been instilled in me as a child, as a teenager, as an adult, like, because it took me up until the last like few years to really understand that concept and really follow through with it and really do the self-help and the self-work to learn to love myself, because I've gone through body dysmorphia. I've gone through the stages where it's like, you know, the way that my body is proportioned was not what was popular when I was in high school. So like I was made fun of for certain things that now people are going and spending $20,000 to have, you know, and it's just like loving yourself and being okay with who you are. Like, had I just done that when I was a kid, like it really probably would have changed so many things in my life. But I was never taught that. That was never instilled in me. So.
And that's what makes you a baddie. Is because you're radiating all the negative stuff that you dealt with. You've turned it into a positive.
Yeah.
And I think that's really cool.
Well, thanks.
I'm proud of you.
I'm trying over here, guys. I'm trying.
That's okay.
You know, if I can help anybody go through, like I posted probably 5 years ago now, I posted a video on YouTube, and it was me talking about body dysmorphia. And it was a very emotional video. I cried, obviously, because that was when I want to say that's really when body dysmorphia became like a title, became like a thing. Like that, they gave a name to it, right? And I never understood, like people would be like, Samantha, you're so beautiful. I don't understand why you don't see that. You're so this, you're so that. And like, that's what people don't understand. I don't see what everyone else sees. I never did, and I never have. What I saw when I looked in the mirror was something that I was unhappy with and I didn't like, and I would beat myself up. And for anyone that knows anything about law of attraction and manifestation and all these things, the universe says yes to everything. So if you look in the mirror and say, I'm ugly, well, guess what? The universe says yes. So if you look in the mirror and you tell yourself, I'm beautiful, guess what? The universe says yes. And if you say that to yourself enough, positive or negative, you start to believe it, right? Mm-hmm. So, and it goes both ways. So, you know, for 25 years of my life, I looked in the mirror and I'm like, I'm fat. I'm not this. My boobs aren't big enough. I'm not skinny enough. I'm not tall enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. I believed it. So it didn't matter what anyone said to me. I constantly compared myself to every female that I ever encountered because I was like, oh, well, she has a really pretty nose and my nose doesn't look like that, so I'm not pretty. Or she has blue eyes and I have shit brown eyes. She's prettier than me. Or she has a really thin waist and I don't. No wonder he likes her more than he likes me. Like I constantly put myself down because I didn't know anything else. I was constantly comparing myself to other people and it was really hard. I had done it for so long. That was probably the hardest thing I ever had to come out of. Was like really learning to like love this me and who I was and how I was built and what made me unique. And really coming into seeing what people saw in me.
There's only one of you. And
I
I
know.
love you just the way you are. Just everything.
Tune in Bruno Mars.
I don't even know how that song goes.
I know.
You say no, bro.
Nope.
It's okay. Well,
Anyways.
I very much appreciate you like telling your story.
Absolutely.
Or
I mean,
just a little bit of it.
I know. It was definitely hard and I knew it was going to be uncomfortable. I didn't expect to cry as soon as I did, but
That's
you know.
okay. I love you. And if you guys aren't following Girls on Fire, make sure to follow us on all social media platforms. And if you want to know more about Sam's story, just hit us up on like Instagram us, email us, like anything. Like we are like 2 open books and we'll be happy to talk about anything that you'd want to hear.
And stay tuned because I'm going to be doing the reverse on Esther here soon.
Oh, shit. Okay.
We love you guys. Again, follow us on social media. Stay tuned every Monday at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time for new episodes on Spotify, iTunes. Hit up our Instagram for all the other links. We love you guys. Thank you so much for listening.